Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. And specifically, I'd like to focus our attention, if I may, on a film that can be found in an amazing set that was released by Criterion some weeks back. And it's this set, which is collectively known overall as the RANOWN Westerns, 5 films directed by Budd Boetticher, starring Randolph Scott. And this has 5 films, the second of which being a film described as being from the year 1957. And this is a film which is directed by Budd Boetticher. And the name of the film is Decision at Sundown. This is the work which is described as being from the year 1957, and it is considered as being under the umbrella of the cycle of westerns known as the RANOWN Westerns. Although, to be specific, it is a Columbia Pictures production and a Scott Brown production. And it's considered that, although it is considered part of the RANOWN Western cycle because of the participants and artists that are involved, those being, of course, people like Harry Joe Brown as a producer, and also partnering producer, associate producer being Randolph Scott, and then the director, Budd Boetticher, and the cast, including people like Randolph Scott, as well as other people in this great cast for this film, John Carroll, Karen Steele, Valerie French, and others. And this is the work which is the great entertaining work and very complex work, which is Decision at Sundown. And I think if we were to try to focus in on the plot or story structure of this, I mean, we could focus in on the Randolph Scott character. Again, our hero, our lead, but a character who has a troubled past, as we will come to learn, which is revealed slowly but surely. But even in the opening moments, we get a sense of a type of topsy-turvy nature or the potential thereof, because we see Randolph Scott's character almost in a position of being a type of rogue or outlaw figure. But the tables are turned in a way as, again, information is presented to us, bringing us to this sort of frontier township area known as Sundown. That's the title, giving rise to the title, Decision at Sundown. And we have our Randolph Scott character and company coming into town in tow, trying to locate or perhaps becoming aware of a very influential public figure in this town. And this is the Tate Kimbrough character, portrayed by John Carroll. And we see his influence, and also it's a big events in his life in terms of his upcoming wedding, a very publicly arranged one at that, although he seems to have a number of relationships on the side as well, maybe hidden relationships with other women. And therein lies part of the potential mystery or potential, say, revelation of information, or the impetus or motivations behind what might be driving Randolph Scott and company, his character, to want to arrive at Sundown and want to meet and track down Tate Kimbrough, who ends up being, on the one hand, as a surface, as a type of hero pursuing villain type of story structure and dynamic, and in many ways it is. This is a film that could be said to be about a hero trying to track down a villain who has done the hero wrong in some form, which we will soon discover in a type of revelation of information about the pasts of these characters. And not only will we learn about it, but the characters in the world of the film will learn about this as well. But that's only part of the story, because we also come to realize that maybe there is more to this than meets the eye. maybe the perceptions of what the characters, and I'm including Scott's character here, as well as John Carroll's Tate Kimbrough, uh, and others, what they perceive to have happened in the past may or may not be what actually happened. And so there is the potential of a type of misunderstanding that could be leading to some real dire consequences along the way. Now, a lot of this type of hero, say, motivation setup has to do with something that has done the hero wrong, and namely something that has happened to Randall Scott's past, namely what has happened with respect to someone that he once knew and loved back in the day, but something or some events seem to have happened which suggests to Randall Scott's character that Tate Kimbrough is somehow or another directly responsible. But is this really the case? Is it really the case of a type of black and white morality tale that is very much strongly delineating our heroes and villains in this world of decision at sundown? Or, as I suggested earlier, is there more to this than meets the eye, such that is it possible to consider this world of nuance, of maybe misunderstandings, of maybe things that were done to us maybe were not due to reasons that we understood them to be at the time, thus creating this whole imbalance of, say, imperfect perceptions and miscommunications and preconceived notions and ideas that lead down a type of psychological trail and path towards a set of, say, motivations of revenge and vengeance that may or may not be wholly based in a type of semblance of reality. So that is a pretty complex psychological package, if ever there was one, and it's wrapped in this great confectionery that is the Budd Boetticher Western. Harry Jo Brown, Budd Boetticher, Randall Scott Western, and it is done in a way that is very clever, that has a great immediacy in terms of how it establishes geographic points and locations and also plot points. The plot is very easy to follow, although I must say that it has a great way of twisting things. You see situations immediately where you think a villain is a hero and a hero is a villain and vice versa. So this film doesn't shy away from blurring the lines between these differing, seemingly opposing sides of the moral spectrum, as it were. And that's a fascinating aspect of this. Again, it's already suggesting to us, signaling to us that the morality distances that are established here may not be so distant as one might seem, which makes for some very compelling watch indeed. And again, sets the psychological landscape of this to the nth degree. It's fascinating stuff, while also setting the information for us in terms of the geographic locations and situations, because the way that the town is set up, sundown is set up, the layout, this also becomes very important in terms of strategic viewpoints, because there will be gunfights ablazing. There will be clashes between characters, this type of show of force that will have dire consequences, that will also really lead characters to maybe question what it is that they're doing in the first place, as well as further testing the grounds in terms of relationships that they have with the people immediately around them. So it's great that everything is clearly set out, and there is also like layer upon layer. Things pile up pretty fast in this world of Decision at Sundown, but it's done in a way that, again, it's very easy to follow, very accessible, very much part of the language and grammar that is the Western. And so you have showdowns in the town square, maybe ambushes that involve members of the law that may or may not be they may or may not be crooked, etc. So and then we have public figures that may or may not be wholly corrupt, etc. And then we have various, say, rivalries of public figures that also lead to certain allegiances that are established with the Randolph Scott character, who at the same time is learning more about his past while getting to know the situation of his current present. So it's all unfolding at a pretty complex pace, but it's done in a way that is, again, so quick and so easy to follow and so up-tempo that it's breathtaking just how fun and enjoyable this is as a Western, as a piece of great Western action-adventure entertainment that is, again, very, very complex, and it's so complex in terms of the way things are presented. Again, things are more complicated than meets the eye, which is one of the great things about a RANOWN Western, a Budd Boetticher film, and Decision at Sundown is, I think, no exception to that. This is a great, great film in that regard, and then some. And the action set pieces, I think, are really well handled. And when things happen, when certain critical points of the plot happen that occur and affect characters that we have come to grow to love and enjoy being around. When things happen of a very serious nature, we really feel them. And our characters do as well. And that transpires into this idea of showdowns, although those aspects of types of genre expectations also have this possibility of being twisted and yes, dare I say, manipulated in a way that makes for very surprising viewing indeed, in a very fresh and innovative way, while also maintaining certain genre expectations that still call out for this wonderful sense of grandeur and entertainment. Also providing wonderful visuals, the setting and location and locale and the rugged outdoors from the very get-go, from the very scenes of the hilltop and the wagon coach, etc., leading into the township itself, and the interior scenes, outdoor scenes. Oh, this is a feast for the senses in many, many respects, and so thoroughly entertaining indeed. Decision at Sundown is it's a great example of a RANOWN Western, or Scott Brown production that is often referred to under the umbrella of the RANOWN Western, and it is very thrilling indeed. It's kind of like almost a it has the sort of political machinations as well, which is also fascinating, and almost Machiavellian in some of the subplots as well, which also adds to the complex nature of the proceedings, very much so indeed. If I had, I mean, I don't usually like to make lists, etc., because they're very difficult for me to do so. But I mean, if I had to make a list of the films I'd seen so far, I mean, I love the film The Tall T, which is what we spoke about before. I love that film, The Tall T, very much. Decision at Sundown. If I had to choose between the two, I'd probably go with The Tall T, to be perfectly honest. But Decision at Sundown is still very exciting, entertaining, fair, and again, the revelation of information and kind of the shock and what's the phrase, epiphany or epiphanies that occur with the characters, and to know what really happened in the past that has come back to haunt the present. This type of revelation is really shocking and very almost refreshing to see while watching this great entertaining Western fare. So Decision at Sundown, what a great film. This is so thoroughly entertaining and so bold, and a great example of Randolph Scott and his cinematic presence, what charisma he has, and shows is willing to show a vulnerability, fallibility to his characters, while also maintaining a sense of heroism that again may or may not be accurate, which is such a bold move indeed for our team here in terms of Harry Joe Brown and Budd Boetticher and Randolph Scott and others. What a film this is. This is a great film. This is the film which is Decision at Sundown. The Criterion Collection has released Decision at Sundown as part of this collection of films under the umbrella known as the RANOWN Westerns, 5 films directed by Budd Boetticher starring Randolph Scott, and this is at spine number 1186, the entire set is. The films don't get their own individual spine numbers, but that's okay. The second of these films being this film, which is Decision at Sundown. It's offered on either the 4K UHD disc, which is what I have in the player here, or the Blu-ray disc. So when you get to the 4K UHD disc, we have this menu, which is 4K UHD disc 2. That second disc, which is the 4K UHD disc 2, features Decision at Sundown and Buchanan Rides Alone. So those 2 films are included. So when you go there, you put it into the machine and you can actually have your choice at the very start menu, which is either Decision at Sundown or Buchanan Rides Alone. Here, let me select Decision at Sundown, and that brings me to the movie, chapters, and subtitles submenu. So if you want the supplements, you're going to go to the Blu-ray disc for Decision at Sundown, plus there's a separate Blu-ray disc for supplements, which we'll talk about in a separate video. But before we do, the presentation is described in notes that are included in this great booklet here, which I've taken the liberty of removing for purposes of this video discussion. On page 3031, it says about the masters. With regard to Decision at Sundown, it says, and I quote, "Decision at Sundown is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. It was restored in 4K by Sony Pictures Entertainment. Scanning, initial color correction, and digital restoration were completed by Cineric from the 35mm original camera negative. SDR color was completed by Danny DeVincent at Cineric. HDR color grading was completed by Sherry Eisenberg at Warner Brothers Motion Picture Imaging. The monaural audio was restored by Blue Wave Audio in Universal City, California, from the 35mm original DME magnetic tracks. The restoration was supervised by Rita Belda for Sony Pictures Entertainment." So here is another Sony Pictures Entertainment led project for restoration and for Decision at Sundown in terms of the look and the sound of this. Now, again, for the most part, I think just overall, I thought it was a really fine presentation. I mean, I've seen this film and I have this film on non-Criterion releases in the past, which have been really great, I must say. But I think overall, this presentation is one that I really like and probably will be my default go-to because of just the way that the colors are just so rich, and there's almost a great saturated look to the colors, which I think serves very well, and that's part of the reason why these RANOWN westerns or the Scott Brown westerns or the RANOWN westerns are just so wonderful as they were. I mean, the aesthetic of it and the colors, they just jump off the screen, and it's always done so in all the versions that I've seen, and so that's certainly the case for this disc as it's shown under this presentation, as provided by Sony Pictures Entertainment as the basis for the Criterion disc. So I think overall it's a fine presentation. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I would say maybe there again just a couple places, not so many places, but some places here and there where I can see that the kind of digitized effect looking grain might seem a bit overly digitized. It might seem digitized to the extent of seeming like a digital cloud over some of the background colors. But those, I think, are maybe fade very quickly from my own field of vision, in a manner of speaking, and they don't last. They are there, so maybe that's just my own eyes saying to me that I have to get used to this kind of maybe digitized look of representing the sort of the grain effect of the film, or it might be something. I mean, I don't see it with every 4K restoration that I see on a 4K disc, but it does happen every once in a while, and I do find it noticeable here, especially when you're talking about sort of the vibrancy of colors. So that's maybe one thing I would mention in terms of just my experience with this. But overall, I would say that it's for me not so noticeable to be overly distracting, and I'm just overall I'm very happy and thrilled with this particular release indeed. So just very excited for this, and as I say, this will be my go-to when it comes to watching this on the watching this film going forward. So Decision at Sundown on this Criterion release. And now let's turn to the supplements. And once again, we have the 4K UHD disc and the Blu-ray disc. So the film Decision at Sundown appears on the second 4K UHD disc. But when we're talking about the Blu-rays, the film appears on the first Blu-ray disc. So Blu-ray disc number 1. 4K UHD disc number 2, but Blu-ray disc number 1. And we're talking once again about Decision at Sundown. And Blu-ray disc number 1, by the way, has the 3 films: The Tall T, Decision at Sundown, and Buchanan Rides Alone. So when you put the Blu-ray disc 1 into the machine, the first thing you'll get is the selection of which film you want to go for. And so for purposes of today, let's do Decision at Sundown, and that'll bring you to the Decision at Sundown submenu. And unlike the 4K UHD disc for Decision at Sundown, Here we have also the inclusion of the supplements. And so what do we have in terms of supplements? Once again, there is a separate Blu-ray disc that is only supplements. So we'll be talking about that supplements disc in a separate video. But for purposes of today, let's focus on what supplements are linked directly with the film decision at Sundown. So if I click here, I see two supplements. One is an introduction by Taylor Hackford, and the second is a trailer. So the introduction by Taylor Hackford it's a great one, and it's great that the Criterion Collection was able to bring this over. It's about 6 minutes, and here Taylor Hackford is showing his love and appreciation and admiration and his real expertise when it comes to a decision at Sundown and the RANOWN Westerns. And I love how he makes the point that technically speaking, this is, he calls it, it's not an official RANOWN Western, and I'm glad he made that point because it is considered under the umbrella of the RANOWN Western cycle. I mean, it's part of the box set. It's often described that way in a lot of written materials, the participation of Brown and Scott and Boetticher, etc. But just in terms of the production, I mean, the production is called a Scott Brown production. I think that's what he means by that remark. And so it's a renowned Western in spirit, but in terms of specific production naming, we're still in the Scott Brown production phase of this, and that's also true for the Tall T, and I think also for Buchanan Rides Alone. But in any event, Decision at Sundown, but it's still a renowned Western in sort of the discussion of this and the participation of the actors and crew and the artists. So. And he's talking to you about how this breaks the convention. I mean, RANOWN Westerns are often referred to as unconventional Westerns, but even in the context of the unconventional Western cycle known as the RANOWN Western, this film, Decision at Sundown, is even, in many ways, even more striking in terms of its extreme unconventionality, in terms of how, say, the loner hero archetype is played with in a way that is very surprising and startling, and also reveals a certain sense of vulnerability and fallibility on the part of such loner hero archetype in the form of Randolph Scott's character. And also just some surprising turns even too about presentations of villains and how villains are more three-dimensional than meets the eye. And so this also is a kind of hallmark of RANOWN Westerns, but also it's taken to a really fascinating extreme in a work like Decision at Sundown. So that's another detail that comes up here. And also, too, just other things about the Boetticher style and approach, the Harry Joe Brown Boetticher approach, Randolph Scott approach, and how this was, they were considering this not just as a B picture, but as an even C picture, you know, quote unquote, lowering the grade of this, unquote, because of its being sort of off the grid in terms of its distribution and release. But that was a great thing, because what that meant was, according to Taylor Hackford, is that it meant that Budd Boetticher and company could really push the envelope even more when it came to depictions of or suggestions of violence and sex in their, as well as a type of psychological amorality or ambiguous nature of the morality underpinnings of the characters, which, as Taylor Hackford suggests, really excited many critics, say, outside of the United States, such as the French critics, with regard to Boetticher's works. And also, it also allows for the inviting of comparisons, I think very reasonable and very complimentary so, of to works like Sergio Leone, etc., sort of psychological, dark, brooding nature of the works like the RANOWN Westerns. Decision at Sundown, I think, being a great example of this. Again, the moral complexity, the amorality of the work, the sort of the moral underpinnings, the difficulties of maintaining a sense of sort of moral structure, etc., while again being a very engaging, entertaining Western. I mean, it's all there. The hallmarks are all there, and then some. So this is a great discussion from Taylor Hackford. I'm glad that the Criterion Collection was able to carry this over. It's approximately 6 minutes. And then we have the trailer. So it's another great trailer in the context of the RANOWN Westerns. But that's it as far as the Decision at Sundown centric supplements go. It would have been nice to have gotten a commentary track, that's for sure. We don't get that here for Decision at Sundown, but that's okay. And we'll talk about some other supplements when we get to that separate supplements disc, the Blu-ray disc, later on in this video discussion series. But in any event, those are the supplements with regard to RANOWN Western Decision at Sundown. And I will be speaking in a separate video about the aesthetics of the packaging and cover art design, but just let me say that the RANOWN Westerns box set is a digipack set, and it would have the sort of opening and closing mechanism like so. So for instance, we have the discs that are housed in this type of casing, and I have removed one of the discs because it's in the player at the moment, but it would be like so. So the 4K UHD discs, and then the Blu-ray discs themselves. So that's the arrangement for the casing, which again, and the cover art design are details that we'll talk about in a separate video. And then I've also pulled out the staple booklet. It's a great staple booklet, very robust, with writings, comprehensive writings about the cycle of Westerns overall. But also there is a brief write-up on each of the films. And so Decision at Sundown's write-up is on page 6 and 7. It's a type of plot synopsis, but it's very easy to follow and very nice read, and it's a great description of the film. Plus, on the opposite page, cast and crew listing. So, and in the middle we have a type of still aspect. So, well done. It's great, and I like the color scheme as well. You know, red to blue, and then to later films, green, and then to a type of maybe orange red, and then to a darker blue, etc. So I like that use of type of the red and blue and green approach. But in any event, this is Decision at Sundown, and we'll have more to say about the other Westerns as well as the RANOWN Western set overall in subsequent videos. But yes, it's another great example of sort of, in spirit anyway, the RANOWN Western cycle. The very great output in the contributions and the collaborations between and among Randolph Scott and Harry Joe Brown and Budd Boetticher and others. It's a very complex Western, a very complex thriller, a drama, an action adventure, and a morality tale and psychological drama, etc., and then some. What a film this is. This is the film which is Decision at Sundown. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Decision at Sundown, including other films in the cycle known as the RANOWN Westerns and beyond. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.